This is Faith Family Cars Podcast. I'm Jerry.
I'm Zach.
Hit the key.
Now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think, according to the power at work within us. That was Ephesians 3:20.
Guys, welcome back to Faith Family Cars Podcast. We're glad you came back to join us once again. And today we have got a special guest on the show. And we met up with him for the first time a few weeks ago at LS Fest. And he told us that he was going to get on the podcast with us, and we've got him today. We're glad to have Trevor Evans with us. So I hope you guys enjoy our time together. Trevor, how's it going?
Doing great. How are y'all doing?
We're doing good. It's been a great Sunday morning already, and we're glad to have you on.
Yes, sir. I'm glad to be here.
So we see you're sitting on your front porch, and whenever we were talking before we got things started here, we could hear the roosters in the background. So you made the comment it's not called Hot Rod Homestead for nothing. So you got a lot of farm animals?
Yes, sir. We've got a countless number of chickens and roosters now. They just keep multiplying. And we've got some goats, dogs, turtles. We got rabbit, cats. We got a little bit of everything around here.
Yeah, so today I'm sporting your Hot Rod Homestead shirt, if you see here.
Yes, sir.
And on the back of it, one of the cool things is you've got your truck on there with farm animals just flying everywhere doing a big burnout. I love that shirt. Yeah, it's cool. So how did you get into hot rodding?
So I got into hot rodding a long time ago. My dad has always drag raced. So every weekend we loaded up. We went to Commerce. It's only about an hour away. That was Atlanta Dragway, for the ones that are local that know what it is. And, you know, he was drag racing before I was born. We went out and did all kinds of stuff, you know, parades and stuff like that. But we didn't really get into driving them a whole lot because, again, they were usually dedicated race cars. When I turned about 10, we decided that we were going to build a 1955 Chevrolet that he had. You know, we built that car starting probably January. About May, he decided that we were going to drive that car on the Hot Rod Power Tour. And that is where it all began. When I was 10 years old, we went on my first power tour, and I have not missed one since. He's kind of moved on to other things during the summer. It's real hot. He's been diagnosed with diabetes. He's not quite as able as he used to be out in the sun, stuff like that. Yeah. So he stays home and relaxes a little bit. And but all reality is kind of just always been bred into me. I've always been about hot rods, fast cars, stuff like that. But you know, we do a church car show every year. This was our 14th annual church car show. So we started that when I would have had to have been 18, 19 years old whenever we started that. And so, you know, it's just kind of always been part of my life. I got into football, baseball in high school, stuff like that. Got a little bit distracted from the car scene, mostly because I couldn't afford it at the time. I was too dedicated to working out, football, get big, do this, all that stuff. But, you know, as soon as I graduated, I kind of ventured out of that world a little bit more and right back to hot rods. And that's actually where the tan truck come from, was my freshman year of college.
Okay, wow. So you said that you all went on the first power tour in what year?
I was 10. That would have been 2001.
Oh, wow. So power tour hadn't been going on very long at that point, had it? What?
I think it started in 96.
Somewhere in that, I was going to say.
Somewhere in that range.
I thought it was late 90s, yeah.
I was like just born when you went on your first power tour. Like I was maybe a month old.
Oh, man.
Yeah, now, you know, and it was not really a planned thing. We had some buddies that went the year before, and they kept talking about it, and that's really kind of what convinced my dad, you know, hey, let's step out of the full-blown race cars. Let's build us a hot rod and drive it across the country, and sure enough, that's what we did.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you've been doing Power Tour for 23 years?
This was my 23rd this year.
Wow, that's crazy. So this year was our second one. Last year we didn't do a full Power Tour. This year we did.
I've never
long
been.
haul. Yeah, he's never been.
The closest thing I did was bringing you a car this year.
Yeah, he brought. Yeah, so bad story, but I'm just going to be real. I had brought my truck down. We got to Bowling Green. We started Power Tour. Spent the night. Had an awesome time watching all the burnouts and everything after Power Tour. Up and down the roads there, man, it was nuts. But left, headed toward Franklin, made it to Franklin, went around the town square, and the little kid out there, of course, what do you want to do for the little kid? He's got his hands a-going, and you try to do a burnout, and I shaved one of the ends of my axles off. So, long story short, yes, I made a critical mistake. I had just installed that rear end the week before, put 2 axles in. We had actually put like 500 miles in that week. I mean, I was driving it constantly.
Wow.
And I had cut my axle too short. And so it was just barely hanging in there because they were cut to fit axles. It was barely hanging in there. And I guess when I popped that clutch, man, it just sheared in right off of it. And we were sitting there.
So I took off work a half day and drove the Cobra all the way to him, 2 hours away. Yeah. And then me and my uncle.
Yeah, they loaded the truck up and brought it back and left us the Cobra.
Yeah, so that's my closest experience to Power Tour.
So the truck did day one, and then the Cobra finished it out.
Yeah,
so,
the Cobra's Mr. Reliable.
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. So you said that your first year in college is when the C10 Custom Deluxe, which I had a K10 Custom Deluxe years ago, but that's when that came into your life. So most people that know who you are going to know who you are because of that truck and because of the massive burnouts that you lay and all the videos all over the internet all about that. And if they ever get the pop-ups all the time from it's Bad Flag, right?
That's it.
Is that right?
Badflag.com.
Badflag.com. If you get those pop-ups all the time, you always see Trevor's truck in those videos. So tell us all about that truck because I'm sure that's what everybody wants to hear about.
Yeah, so, I mean, the tan truck, it is a 1985 Chevrolet Custom Deluxe. It's factory paint. I've never touched anything on the outside besides the trim. It was missing several of the little trim pieces on the side, just the black strip going down the side of the truck. That is the only piece that I've ever replaced on the outside of that truck. Besides the grill, it was broken. It's not C-notched. I've never cut any holes in it. Nothing on that truck has ever been cut, and magically it kind of just does what it does.
So it sits that low without being C-notched.
And hauls trailers and everything else.
That is crazy, man. That is crazy. Mine had to be C-notched because it bottomed out every time you hit a bump.
Yeah, that one I have probably 2 inches between the frame and the rear end. Yeah. And for some reason it just the cow tracks help a lot, but there wasn't many miles on that truck. I think the dash showed like 40,000. I assumed it was 140, but the more that I've gotten to drive it and the way that I realized that leaf springs wear and stuff like that, I am not certain that might not have really been a 40,000 mile truck because
wow.
The lady told me, it never left their farm. It came out of right on the county line of Dawsonville and Dahlonega, and that's mostly farmland. And it was her dad's, and she told me that the only reason it ever left the farm was to go get gas.
Wow! So it could have been a 40,000 mile truck. The amazing part to me is how much you paid for it.
Yeah. So I, she told me she would take $1,200 for it. I did not argue at all about it. I loaded my pockets with everything I had, went up there, and, when I took a battery and a jug of gasoline with me, it was a 305 700. I figured if I could get it to turn over, hopefully it would spark hard enough to crank up. Mm-hmm. I put a little bit of gas in the carburetor, hooked the battery up. It turned over twice and fired up and didn't just run. It idled. I mean, did not hesitate to run. And she said it had been sitting there for about she said about 7 or 8 years probably. And it just fired right up. And I mean, I got out of the truck
awesome.
and was checking things with it idling. So
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So it is. Go ahead.
no, it blew me away. I was completely blown away. I was pulling down the driveway in it. She was tickled to death. I was tickled to death. She handed me $400 back into the window and told me to take care of it. It was her dad's, and one of the things that really stuck was she said that out of all the colors he got, she loved that one. She loved the tan and white, and that strictly right there is the reason that I never painted it. I always wanted a white C10. I wanted it white on white. I was like, it's light. Maybe I could spray over this. And when she said that, I decided, nope, this is it. This is what it's going to be.
Yeah.
Well, the truck's got that's a great story right there. And the story of these vehicles, to me, is one of the coolest parts about them. So, but that truck has now had how many? It started out with a stroker motor, correct? After the 305.
So after the 305, which I drove it around for like a year, first thing I did, I was 19 years old. I slammed it. I lowered it down with the cheapest parts I could possibly get off of eBay. The kits were too expensive at the time because those trucks were not really being built, 13 years ago. Yeah. And so here I went straight to eBay, got a flip kit, got drop shackles. I actually got the drop shackles from a swap meet. They were used off of another truck. I don't even know what they came off of. Got me some 3-inch drop spindles back when they offered those. Got some springs, stuff like that. So I hammered it down, drove it for a year like that. It started smoking a little bit. I might have caused that. I probably caused that. And it was so slow. It was dangerous to pull into traffic. I mean, reality, you had to make sure nothing was coming from both directions before you ever took off. And it was so sketchy. And so I ended up pulling that motor out. I put a 383 stroker in it that we had laying around in the shop. That actually came out of my Camaro, and threw it over in there. And I thought it was a powerhouse, small block 383, pretty high compression. It would wrap the tack like it was nothing. And that's when I realized, whoa, this thing will spin tires. And so I romped it around town for a little while. I had a local transmission shop put me a 700 R4 in it that was built up, put a nice converter in it, and didn't realize it, but I had myself a little hot rod right there. Drove it around. I probably had it like that for 3 or 4 months. Went through a set of tires or two, thought I was really doing something. And a guy came out. So we have a local show called the Moonshine Festival. And they usually have a pretty big crowd come out. So the family that I bought the truck from actually came over and saw it in that state. They kind of saw it in that stage of its life. So I was talking to them. She was tickled to death. I had 20s on it. It didn't look like her dad's truck anymore. And, so they progressively, we talked. She cried a little bit. We had a good time together. And they moseyed on. Well, directly behind her was a guy that walked up. He said, "Hey, I heard this truck runs pretty good." I was like, "It's just an old hot rod pickup. It's nothing to brag about. It's a 383, I said, "But it does spin tires." And he said, "Do you think that motor will make a 70 Nova spin tires?" I said, "This motor will probably make your 70 Nova jump a Coke can in a parking lot." He said, "You know what? I might be willing to test that out." I said, "Oh yeah." He made me an offer for that motor that I couldn't turn down. That night, we pulled that motor out of that truck, and the money that came out of selling that motor went towards my first LS.
That is nuts.
So it was, and I literally, a few weeks prior to that, I'd been talking to a guy that's local. He buys and sells and trades LS motors and all this stuff. And he had told me, he's like, "Man, you need to put one in that. They're starting to get big. People are starting to hear about them, and they're still cheap." And I was like, "I don't know, man. I don't know anything about the fuel injection stuff like that." Well, when that guy made me that offer, I was like, we're about to find out about this fuel injection.
Yeah. No, that's a pretty wild story right
Yeah.
there. So it has progressed. It's got it. That's not the same LS that's in it, correct?
No, so what I first purchased was a LY6. The cam bearings that went out, it was dirt cheap, and had bad cam bearings, which is kind of typical of them with the variable valve time and stuff like that. So pulled the cam out. I had to knock a few of the cam bearings off the cam just to get it out.
Wow.
Then my biggest struggle was lifters. That motor ran for so long, and it wasn't making noise because I heard it run. Had a little bit low oil pressure, which is kind of normal on a high mileage motor. And so I ended up taking it to my engine builder. We had to knock, the lifters out the bottom, stuff like that. They had mushroomed up. They just gotten real hot and swelled on the bottom. And so that is where the 416 stroker came from. Johnny Thomas, Traco, it's Thomas Racing Engines. He's incoming. That's where I'm from.
Okay.
And he did all my dad's racing engines. He was the only one that I even knew that knew who I was, that would be willing to build one for me. And that was the first LS motor that he had ever built.
Wow. That's cool. So you put turbo on that motor, correct?
So that motor, so the 416, I beat the snot out of it. My buddy Lance Dishroom, he helped me get everything dialed in. That motor was getting like 20 miles a gallon. Driving across the country, it went on, I think 6 power tours. It made 6 long hauls with that motor and setup. At about 70,000 miles, that's when I got invited out to Hoonigan, out in California. And I blew both head gaskets. I slung the water pump propeller out the front, got my radiator, all that good stuff. So
all that happened after the Hoonigan thing, because I just rewatched that video a couple days ago.
Yeah, so
I didn't realize I saw that.
They never did, so they cut all the film because they thought I was going to be upset about hurting the truck, and I was on cloud 9. I was just so excited to be out there in general. I wouldn't care if they followed me around for a week after that.
Yeah.
But I popped the hood and I realized that the pulley for my water pump was kind of off to the side. The belt was no longer on, and I was like, man, I just slung a belt. Well, the deeper I looked, the worse it got. The propeller for that water pump, everything just kind of shot out the front. The water pump it basically exploded, and it only had one way to go because back wasn't an option, so it went forward. Got everything, and that's what ended up. It got so hot it blew both head gaskets, stuff like that. But after Hoonigan, I came back, redid the head gaskets, put a new water pump on it out in Texas. We actually drove it in Texas on our way home from California. We actually drove it into Lone Star Throwdown.
Oh, wow.
So that was pretty wild. My buddy Eric out at having a brain fart right now. It's not Texas Speed. I'll think of it here in a minute. But he runs a little hot rod shop out in Texas, and he brought me a water pump to Lone Star Throwdown. We threw it on in a parking lot, and there we went. I didn't even care. We just drove it. It was broke.
Yeah.
I already knew it was broke, so I just kept on with it. It was all right. Got back home, and I had a little junkyard 6.0 sitting there. Threw it in and decided that's what I was gonna up my turbo game. I was gonna give it a shot, see what happened. Yeah. So I'll shrink the story down. My first 6.0 had a few minor issues. I put a really big cam in it, stuff like that. Well, I got some bad gas. Now it's time for the next power tour. Got some bad gas in St. Louis, Missouri. Of course, I'm doing a burnout between the 2 famous hotels in St. Louis, and it bogged on me full tilt. I mean, it was wide open and bogged, and I was like, whoop, turbos aren't supposed to do that. Yeah. And so I limped it back to the hotel. By this time it was knocking, I was like, whoop, there went that one. We towed it back. My buddy Twig, the one that comes everywhere with me, Andrew Thomas is his name. He left work that day. I called him. It was like, I guess it was probably 10 o'clock in the morning the next day, I called him. I was like, hey, man, we're not going to get this truck fixed. I might need you to come and pick me up if it's possible. He said, don't worry about it. I'm on my way. He left work, went to my house, got my truck, hooked it to the trailer, and beat me back to the hotel from the last stop of the power tour that day. I rented a car, went to the last stop. You get everything tagged in. And I was headed back to the hotel, and he beat me there. I pulled in. I was at the red light behind him when we pulled in the parking lot to the hotel.
Dang.
That's a true friend right there. He's got your back.
That is that's like a brother right there. And
yes, it is.
Ever since then, he's been like my little brother. He's helped me build all this stuff. My dually especially. We work on my Camaro together. We work on his vehicles. He's helped me build all my truck and all that stuff. And when we got back from the power tour that year, we came back home, and I ended up being sick when I got back. My stepdaughter was sick, so everybody's at work, and here we are at home. We're like, well, we're not feeling too bad. Let's just see if we can put another motor in this truck. And so I pulled out that junkyard 6.0, and I had a 6.0 over here that had been taken apart for experimental reasons and never put back together. And I was like, you know what? I was like, this is it. I was like, it might not last 2 days anyways. I said, we're going to throw it in. And so we pulled everything out of that motor that I had just blown up. I mean, like metal shavings everywhere. Oil pump, the timing set, everything that I had just put into that motor, the ARP head bolt, stuff like that, everything that I'd put in, well, it went in the new motor. So I was like, it is what it is. If it blows up, I'm not wasting any money. And that was 3 years ago. We're still in that motor.
Wow. Nice. And that motor, you have dynoed to around 800 wheel horsepower, a little more?
I have seen 822 horsepower at the wheels.
Okay.
And I've got several pounds above that setting now. Yeah. So
I don't think either one of us have ridden anything that fast.
We haven't.
It cooks pretty good. I mean, all reality, I turn it down. My lowest setting that I have for the street on E85 is between 760, 780, depending on how hot it is outside. I've went on my street tune. It's actually been a 1043 at 100 and guess it was 134, and that was on Hot Rod Power Tour in Bowling Green this year. I never turned it up. I just swapped tires over, went down, and it went a 1043 at 134 miles an hour on my 760, 780 tune.
That's pretty awesome. That's fast. Yeah.
That was it was getting down, so that was pretty nice.
Yeah. So you also had a few years back, and I don't know what cars you currently have because you don't show all of them all the time, but I know you did have a Nova, which you sold, but that Nova, the second motor in it was a 4.8. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. So I actually, when I bought the car, it had a 4.8 liter in it. Silly me. I put pump gas in it. I was running pump 93, and I was doing a couple of highway pulls in Mexico with one of my buddies in a little S10. And the very first pull, it shot a flame out that I couldn't even see my buddy beside me anymore. I mean, it was like a 10-foot flame. I was like, that's not supposed to happen. And it wasn't. It popped number 7 ring gland on that pull. And I made 5 more after that. So the harder I pushed it, the louder it knocked. So the little 4.8 that could, it let go. Twig helped me pull that motor out. I got another 4.8 liter just because that was kind of an experimental car. I loved it, and it was wicked fast, but I didn't have a lot of money in it. So I was like, if we're going to test something, this is what we're going to test on. So we played with it, and I put a 4.8 in it. I got the rings, put some 799 heads on it, stuff like that. Didn't do hardly anything to the motor, but got the rings, put a boost cam in it. And man, that little thing, it would fly.
Yeah, it was a 75 or 80 horse car too, right?
Yeah, it was just shy of 800 horsepower.
Yeah. It's pretty wild.
Yeah,
So
with a 6-speed, it was so much fun to drive, and
I thought it was a manual. I've watched videos of it running down the drag strip, and I'm like, it's a manual. Yeah, that's a manual.
it is. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, if I can save up enough money in my lifetime, I'll buy that car back. I miss it so much.
Well, it took off to where? Indiana?
Indianapolis, yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah. And so you sold it and bought the 63 or 60 Impala. So do you still have that car?
I do. I still have it. So it's a 4-door 1960 Impala. It's resale red. It's got black houndstooth interior. Beautiful, beautiful car on air ride. And I've been threatening that that's my next LS swap turbo build. And it is so nice. I'm scared to take that one apart. It's just such a nice car. So
well, as big a fan
we'll see what
as
comes of that one.
Yeah, as big a fan as I am of an inline six, because I like inline sixes, and I think it needs an LS in it.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I'm all. So I like an inline six. They're really reliable, and they actually make more power than the 305 and my square body did. So I can't say anything bad about an inline six. But man, there's nothing like a big, heavy vehicle with a turbo and an LS under the hood.
Yeah, no, there's not. And even though we're four guys, we see being at LS Fest really, I think, opened our eyes to what you can do with the LS. I think he knew because he's really into the drag racing scene, and I'm not. I'm more into the cruising old man scene, but. It's being there, you really see how versatile the LS is and what you can do with it. You can just make it. You can just take a truck 5.3 and make a good cruiser out of it, or you can turbo them and run 10-second quarter miles.
I think something I learned from LS Fest is, I knew that there was a bunch of support behind the LS, but I never when you see it laid out in front of you with all the booths that they had there, you really see how much support.
Way more than anything you see at Hollywood Fest.
You're not going to find that for a small block Ford.
No.
Yeah.
But, the inline six really speaks to me because my truck's an inline six. It's just a hopped up little cruiser motor. But one day, and we've talked this over multiple times of what we need to do, I do want to turbo that motor. It's not like it's going to be any race engine. It's not going to win any races.
It'll do a fat burn.
But it'll do a nice burn out with a turbo on it. Hey, and to me, part of the turbo is just the sound.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it sounds so cool, and as cheap as it is to do a turbo kit anymore, to me it's almost like a no-brainer. I've got to do it at some point.
Especially because you're not building like a race engine. You can just go with something cheap if you really wanted to. You don't have to worry about something super reliable.
Right.
Yeah. So if I'm wanting to win races, I'm not going to use an inline six anyway.
Yeah. Well, it'll have something else in there.
Yeah. So you've got the 60 Impala. Do you still have your wife's 53 Bel Air?
We do. Yeah, we still have her 1953 Bel Air. We've still got my dually, my 1980 C30 dually. Thad, the gentleman that y'all got to meet out at LS Fest, that came with Twig and I. He's actually been redoing the brakes on that truck, getting it ready. So keep an eye out for that one. It's about to be doing some pretty cool stuff too. That gooseneck that I had. Yeah. We're about to be tied to a C30 dually really soon. So we're gonna have some pretty cool stuff ready for that.
So is it getting ready to be making some nice sounds too? Or you don't want to let the cat out of the bag?
I haven't made my mind up yet. I'm either gonna that has been in the works for a long time already. I was gonna turbo it to begin with, and now with some of the issues that we've progressed with that thing and seen over and over again, I'm kind of glad we didn't, because it would have taken some shadow away from brakes that needed work, the clutch that I couldn't get figured out. So we've had some hiccups with that truck, but new clutch pedal. New clutch, I had to do a cross member in it. Had to put bags on the back. I've had to, now we've redone the brakes, done a little bit of extra wiring on it. So, I mean, that truck's been kind of a work in progress for a little while.
Yeah.
But if we can ever get ahead on that one, it'll be spooling up real soon too.
Okay.
Oh man,
That's gonna be awesome.
yeah.
So,
but
well, what else you got at the homestead?
over here at the house, I've got another 1960. It's a Bel Air. I drove it to high school. It's baby blue with a white top.
Wow.
Nice.
Nobody hardly ever sees that one anymore. That one's actually got a big sound system, all the stuff that the teenagers like. That's actually a pretty cool car. I've had it parked under a shed out here, and it's got some clear coat peeling and stuff like that. I think it was resprayed probably in the late 70s, early 80s. It's a cool car. It's just slammed down on some billet wheels. Not bagged or anything, it's just really low. It's got a 383 stroker in it with a 700 R4. So it's
Nice.
just got it's got one of those hot rod boat sounds to it, the blup, 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 blup. So that I call it my land yacht. And
Oh man.
so I've got that. So I've got both 60s. I've got my dually. I've got my tan truck. I've got my 1969 Camaro. That is the nicest car that I've got. It's a 1969 SS car.
Nice.
Black with white stripes, big block 496. It's got a Borg Warner T5 5-speed. Not quite enough transmission to be behind the big block, but it's good enough for cruising. We
Kind of what I was
still have
thinking.
so that big block, it used to be a race motor. We've dropped the compression in it, turned it way down, backed it way off of what it was, put a giant cam. So everything you want a big block to be, we kind of took that away just for a cruiser. That car's made several power tours. So it's just a cool car, but it is 100%, no doubt in my mind, the nicest car I've got.
Yeah.
I've got my wife's got a 1968 Chevrolet C10. It's black,
Nice.
step side, big block truck. It's a 454 turbo 400. That one's probably going to make a return within the next year or so. It's not so much the money right now that is holding our family back. Thankfully, we're extremely blessed. We both work. Our babies are healthy. We got a lot of stuff going on, but thankfully we're okay with the finance situation. It's more the time.
Yeah.
I work a lot. Whenever I come home from work, I'm chasing the babies. You know, anybody that's got a family, they understand. And like I was saying, I'm extremely blessed to not have to worry so much about the financial side. I will say, I've been down to eating ramen noodles for a week at a time, so don't think I'm rich by any stretch of the term. But I try my very best to still be able to put the family first.
Yes.
Before the hot rods, which is, my wife doesn't see it, but she doesn't realize some of the things that I hold off on too.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
She sees all these parts coming in, and what a lot of people don't understand is, the money is not so much in the parts. It's actually if you have to pay somebody to build it for you.
Yeah.
That is when if you can do the work yourself, you're saving 70% of the process right there.
Oh yeah, yeah. And I noticed that, like with the dually, that was kind of a budget build. I mean, it still is. It started out as a budget build, and that was really attractive to me.
We spent bare minimum on that truck, and when I say bare minimum, I'm like, the things that we didn't have laying around came off Amazon. And anybody that says that you can't build one for cheap, or Amazon doesn't sell good parts or anything like that, we just changed the oil in it for the third time. We've got 10,000 miles on that truck. They were a couple of rough miles in there, but man, it's made it, and one of the purposes, but especially my YouTube channel, the Hot Rod Homestead, where that Twig and Thad, myself, some of our other buddies, we do all this stuff. I want to show everybody, you don't have to be a big time shop. You don't have to have the most money. You don't have to be the very best fabricator. You don't have to be all these top dog things like a lot of the TV shows will present. You just got to want to do it. You just got to want to dig in, and don't be afraid to dive into something, because what's the worst that could happen? You accidentally fix it. That's how I kind of look at everything in hot rods. my dad has always worked on his own stuff. So there was kind of my example, like, hey, if he can do it, I saw him do this one time, I'm going to try it. And he'll even admit to this day, he didn't realize I was paying so close attention to the things that he was doing, because when I built my square body the first time, he was upset that I was pulling the motor out. I mean, he was upset because he was like, this thing's never going to run again. I didn't see it before you pulled it apart, so I don't know where this goes. I don't know where this goes. Well, 3 days later, I'm driving it out of the shop and spinning tires pulling out. I mean, I'm literally spinning tires coming out of the garage. And he approached me. He said, I did not realize you were actually paying attention, because you know how little boys are. My little boy's the same way. Fully distracted, fully doing other things, but thankfully he was an example of, be patient with this, you'll figure it out. If you can't figure something out, call somebody who you know that knows it and take a little bit of advice and run with it. And that's what I did, because back then they didn't really have YouTube. You couldn't just look up Chris Fix It and be able to fix something on a 1985 square body. Now you can look anything up that you wanted to, but 13 years ago, YouTube wasn't quite like it is now, and I just had to. I hate to say it, but I just had to wing it. I literally just had to try it to see what happened.
And that's kind of where I come from. I didn't have a dad like you did that taught me any of that stuff. So the only thing I learned from my dad is change the oil, and that was it. And he rarely did that. He usually took it somewhere. So for me, it started out as, I always loved cars growing up. I always wanted to do something in the automotive field. I got into auto mechanics early and hated it.
But you realize you like working on your junk and nobody else's.
That's exactly what I did. And but then I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford to do any hot rodding. We had Zach, he was small, and we didn't have much money. And so I had to work on my own cars too. So it got to kind of a point where, you
had to have it running for the next day to go to work the next day.
That's right. So I just had to fix whatever. And I developed, I moved my way into finally getting to where we could afford to do some hot rodding. By that time, he's a teenager and he's out there with me because I need help,
Yeah. Well, I kind of had a little bit of the, making sure my vehicles ran to get to work the next day. I mean, I had the F-100 for a little while that was broken every single day, and I fixed it every single day for the time I had it. So it was, I've the same thing, except I was blessed enough to be able to have all these YouTube mechanics that I was able to look at as well. So when I couldn't figure something out, I could, if Dad wasn't around at the time, I could use YouTube.
Use YouTube.
Figure it out, yeah.
So you were talking about the budget build and using Amazon and whoever, and with my truck, which is our first real hot rod project, that's basically, we did a lot of that, eBay, Amazon, and then as it's progressed, I've put better parts in it, and we've started putting better stuff on it. But to start out, I just wanted to drive it and enjoy it and have fun with it, and that's what I encourage everybody to do. When you get started, just get it driving and running and get out there and enjoy it, because then you're going to want to be more involved and do more with it and have more fun with it. So
I mean, if it's constantly in the garage or the engine's constantly on an engine stand, you're gonna get burnt out. I've dealt with that with my current car. I've drove it twice since I bought it. So
we got to work through some issues on it.
Yeah, but I mean, burnout is bad when it just sits in the garage all the time.
Well, you start to
get out and drive it.
You start to lose your want to get it done.
I've lost motivation a lot in that car.
So you said that you got it's hard to find time a lot of times. You're really busy. I know you're involved in your church, and I think that when we spoke before, you mentioned you are involved in the college age ministry. Is that right?
We are. I am. Yes, sir.
Yeah, so can you tell us a little bit about that and what you do there?
Yeah, so I currently teach the college and careers class at church. So that the age range is 18 and up. That allows anybody that's graduated high school to come and join us. And so what we basically do is I try and do devotions that relate to that age range. The reason that I get along with and relate to that age range is because even though I was building my tan truck, even though I was getting out in the world, I was working, I was going to college, it didn't take me very long to realize that I was distracted. That is the easiest age that I have found that you are actually distracted from God, because you are opened up to so many new things in life. Your parents aren't quite watching you as closely. Your friends are not quite watching you as closely. You know, there's so many things in life that are changing, and they're not changing like over time. They are changing right away. And it's one of those things where that I relate really well to that group of male and female, because I screwed up. I did things I shouldn't have. I got around the crowd that everybody warns you about. I did all these things wrong. And if there's any way that I can relate to this age group and not prevent them from doing the same thing, but kind of just be that shoulder to lean on and be somebody that can answer questions, my main goal is to be the person that I needed when I was in the wrong spot. I want to be, I try my very best to lead by example. I don't want to say something that I'm not willing to do myself. I don't want to ask them like, hey, you know, let's work on this if I'm not willing to work on it myself, because I will be the very first one to tell you that I am so far from perfect that it's honestly not even funny. I do everything that I can. I try hard in this position, this position, this position, and daily I fall short. We're human. It doesn't matter if we're in church 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, we're going to sin. And I want them to know that, you know, I'm not here to judge, but I'm here to lean on if you hit something and you don't know what to do. A lot of times when I was that age, I would pray about it and I wouldn't wait on an answer. I wouldn't wait. I would just I would do what Trevor wanted. And I realized really quickly that is not what Trevor needed to do. Trevor needed to wait on God to help him and lead him in the direction that Trevor needed to go. But I was young, I was stubborn, I was silly, you know, just doing things that I shouldn't have been doing around people that I shouldn't have been around. And that is the sole purpose that I love that age group, because in high school, I was such an angel. I had good grades. I played all the sports. I thought I did this right. I thought I did this right. Yes, I was your typical high schooler, saying things, doing things, goofing off, you know, doing all this stuff. But I had a clean driving record. I had good grades. You know, by the book, I was doing pretty well. But in my heart, that's what I was missing. So
and we can look good from on the outside, but on the inside, none of us are good, you know. And
that's right.
And Paul, you know, said, "I die daily," and we're going to mess up, and we got to go to God, and we got to ask Jesus for forgiveness on a daily basis, you know, for those screw ups. So I know that your Zach is in that college age, you know, still he's 23 years old, and that's when it started for him too, you know, right out of high school. And
it wasn't in high school. It was honestly a lot like what you were saying. Like in high school, you know, I was kind of a goody two shoes kind of person. You know, I had decent grades. You know, I had a clean driving record at that point.
You did at that point.
Yeah. Technically, it's still clean. All the tickets were amended down, but you know, we're good. Anyway, but no, it was when I graduated. That's when I really just started, you know, doing things that same situation, doing things I shouldn't have. It was really when I turned 21. Yeah. When I turned 21, it got bad. But before then, just graduating high school, you know, just like you said, you're out in the world, you know, your parents aren't really watching you. You do what you want. You go to your job. So I didn't go to college. So I worked a full-time job, and then when I wasn't working, I was hanging out with friends. So, you know, there'd be nights I wouldn't be getting home till 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. And my dad's always said nothing good happens after dark. So,
Right.
And that's kind of when I went through my roughest time period, was right out of high school, just like what you were, the people that you, college age that you teach. So I personally think it's amazing what you're doing. Giving somebody, giving people somebody that they can, like a shoulder to cry on, a shoulder to lean on,
right.
to
somebody they can talk to.
Yeah. Because a lot of people don't have it. And, I had a buddy in high school. We've kind of not really close anymore, but he didn't really have a dad that he was really close to. So, my dad was that for him. And during that time period when he was struggling with things, that's who my dad was for him. And I feel like you're kind of doing the same thing for these kids. And I think that's really good.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, so I was asked to help with the class. It's probably been about 5 years ago. And it's been life-changing for me. It's been one of those things where that, I don't claim to be quote unquote the teacher. I'm just part of the class. I'm literally just the oldest one in the class is all it is. We hang out a lot. We go and do a lot of stuff outside, like Twig. He's one of the members of the class. I've got several others that are actually new to the class. I've got male, female. I've got everybody in the class, and we've been to Jackson Hole, Wyoming together. We've done stuff together. Twig and I, we go on the power tour. We go to LS Fest, stuff like that. And I feel like that's why it is so important for me to be such an example, because I don't want to just be an example in the classroom. Yeah. I don't want to just be an example while I'm with them at church. I don't want to just be an example whenever I send out our daily Bible verse or our weekly Bible verse, anything like that. I don't want to just be the person behind the screen or in the classroom. I want to be an example everywhere that I go. And
yes.
and it's tough. I can't lie about it. It's a hard thing to do. In a world that we're in right now, I can't lie to you and say that it's easy, because no matter how hard we try, it's just not. It's just not easy. It's not easy to be a Christian-based person in a world full of sinners, and it's hard to relate that so hard, because I myself am a sinner. I'm not pushing anybody before or behind myself, because I am equal with everybody on this earth.
That's right, amen.
And I'm no better than either of you. I'm no better than anybody listening to this. I'm no better than anybody out there. I am just a sinner saved by grace, and I just want to do everything that I can possibly do to help. I've not had a preacher calling. I've not had anything of that sort, but I do feel deeply, deeply, deeply that I am meant for more than just sitting in a pew on a Sunday morning. I do feel like I am meant for more than just sending out a Bible verse every now and then. And when I realized that, the Lord really put FCCE, that's kind of where my car page came from. Fellowship of Christian Car Enthusiasts. I was literally woke up in the middle of the night one night, wrote that down, and couldn't go back to sleep. One that hit me about midnight, maybe a little bit after, about 1 o'clock in the morning. And I've got apparel now. I've got everything now, and it's just one of those things. It's not so much about selling T-shirts or selling hats or giving away stickers or posting the vehicles. It's not about that. It's more about the meaning behind it. It's the meaning behind, I want to be a shining light in a community that the Lord is not always put first, and that's right. That's what it's all about.
And that's exactly why we're doing this podcast, because I said, I was praying and asking the Lord, what more does He want from me? That was my prayer. And we kind of talked about this before. And that's when he laid this podcast on my heart, over months of praying. And that's because I want to do something that was affiliated with the car industry and with hot rodding. And, I'm like, God is not put first in the car world, and it's rare to really hear people, give their testimony or talk about God in the car world. And what you're doing and what God's leading us to do, I feel like is needed in the industry. And, there are so many guys out there that just since LS Fest, we have had follow the podcast, and it's been really awesome to see. And so thinking about what you're involved in now and letting the Lord lead you, how did that start? How did you come to Christ?
So when I was 9 years old, one of my buddies, his name's Cade Kelly, we went to kindergarten together, all that stuff. So he had came by my house one day. We hung out almost every day. He came by my house one afternoon, and he was like, guess what happened to me last night? I was like, I don't know, man. What's up? And he was like, I was saved. I was like, what do you mean? What do you mean you were saved? And he was like, no, man, like I accepted Jesus into my heart. And I mean, we're 9. Like, I mean, we're little bitty, and I didn't understand. I was like, what do you mean, man? Like Jesus is always with us. And he's like, no, man, like I was saved. And I was like, okay, well, that got my mind thinking really hard. And my family had been to church. We'd been visiting a couple churches, stuff like that. But we had never really settled down. I had never really hardcore focused, anything like that. I was just kind of the little boy playing with the Hot Wheels in the pew. Even at 9 years old, I would listen, but I didn't quite understand. And so so I decided, you know what, I'm gonna try going to church with him. And so his mom started taking me to church. I got involved with a youth group. They accepted me with open arms. And there it kind of went. So I went there for I was about to turn 10, so I turned 12. I'd obviously been pretty into the youth group every Sunday, every Wednesday night, all the events they had, stuff like that. And it was spring revival. It was on a Thursday night. Actually, let's go back the night before. It was Wednesday night on a spring revival. And I just felt heavy. I felt like the preacher was getting onto me. You know what I mean? Like I felt like I was in trouble. Like if you're ever in school and you go to the principal's office for the first time, you've been caught, you're guilty. It's a burden. I felt all of my burdens just on me, and I didn't know why. You know what I mean? It was one of those things I was like, why do I feel this way? Why do I feel so down right now? Why does this hurt? And Cade asked me, he said, hey man, you good? I was like, yeah, I'm all right. I'm okay. And he's like, well, you don't seem all right. Is everything good? And I was like, yeah, I'm okay. And so, 12 years old, his mom took me home. Everything was normal. She kind of brought up a few things on the way home, and got the wheels turning a little bit more. And Thursday night comes around. She came and got me a little bit earlier that night. We got to church just 10 minutes earlier than we did the night before. Everybody's talking to us, and all of a sudden I feel the same way. At school, when I was with all my buddies, just not thinking about it, I still had a burden. It just wasn't quite going away. Well, I got to church, and it got even heavier, and I was like, what is going on? Well, the preacher that night, Danny Bennett, he was up front, and he's got a real deep voice, and he was just talking, and he kind of mentioned, laying your burdens down. And from that point on throughout, and that was like the second sentence that he said the whole entire night. He had helped with the revival. And from that moment, I just blanked. I just blanked out. I couldn't focus on anything that was being said. All I could really just play back in my head was "Lay your burdens down." And you know, the feeling got heavier. They started singing up front, and there was a gentleman that they used to walk around church, and he had been a member there forever, and he would come around shaking hands. They were still singing up front. He was already walking around shaking hands.
Yeah.
And he lives one street over from my parents, so I actually knew who he was. And his name's Rupert Harris, and he, you know, made his way around the church, and all of a sudden, you know, I knew he was back there somewhere, and they were singing probably somewhere around the last verse, and I felt he got real big hands. I mean, like giant hands, and I felt his hand hit my shoulder, and that nudge is all it took.
Yeah.
I went straight up to the altar, I broke down, and I accepted Jesus as my Savior that night.
Praise God.
You know, I was saved that night. It was a Thursday night. The next night came around. I asked to join the church, you know, Friday, the last night of spring revival. And then on Easter Sunday, directly following that, I was baptized. So it was like,
Nice.
could not have been more perfect. I didn't have to wait. You know, everything, it just lined up so perfectly. And anytime that I give my testimony, I feel like it's kind of necessary to add in the not so fun part of being a Christian, because I feel it's important. When I was saved, you know, that feeling stuck with me. My burdens were lit. I could literally feel when I asked God to come into my heart, that weight felt like somebody just snatched it right off my shoulders and threw it away.
Yeah.
They didn't tell me what comes after that.
Yeah.
That, you know, then that's when you really start working for God, right? That's when that burden that you just let go of, that's when you start carrying it around with you and realizing that, you know what, I have to do something for God. That I have to set all that aside. I have to forget that old body that I had, and now I have to live for Jesus. So I took on a lot of things. You know, I'm 12 years old. I tried to do the best that I could. You know, I was a pretty good kid. You know, I had a pretty clean mouth. I had, you know, my family was awesome. You know, we were doing hot rods. You know, everything was really, really good. And went through high school, played football. I was a part of the FCA. You know, I was part of all the Fellowship of Christian Athletes, you know, stuff like that, and I felt like I was in the right spot. I hung out with all the Christian-based football players. The one who were not Christian-based, I was actually bringing them to church with me, and a couple of our buddies got saved, you know, in high school and stuff like that, and then all of a sudden, I graduate. You know, here we go. It's time for real world stuff. And if real world stuff was a test, I failed. Still making good grades. I'm in college. You know, I had every scholarship that I could get as far as academically goes. My academic scholarships were enough to where that it actually paid my entire college career.
Wow, nice. No.
Thankfully, I was blessed with book smart, because my common sense at the time was not there. You know, I stayed on top of my school stuff. You know, I did the very best I could, but when I turned 18, you know, I was still in high school. As soon as I graduated high school, I moved out, and I'm currently where I moved out to. This is my grandma's home place, right at the road to my parents. And so, you know, it's 1.2 miles from my parents' house, so I stayed close. But my walk with Christ distanced itself, and it wasn't because God left me. It was because I went down the wrong path, because Trevor knew what was going on, right? So I went down a really bad path. I got in with the wrong crowd of people. I built my tan truck. All of a sudden, I was making a name for myself. You know, I've got pretty fast truck, some pretty cool stuff. I'm starting to make big boy money. I'm starting to do big boy things. You know, I'm starting to kind of get recognized, stuff like that. Well, I kind of ditched the crowd that I was hanging out with. That's when my wife and I got together, and started getting serious. My wife had a daughter, Haley. She actually helped me build the motor in the truck that's in it now, and I got pretty serious about church again. So I had never quit going to church, but I had not been serious about it for a long time. There's a big difference in going to church and sitting in a pew, and going to church and actually acknowledging who's around you, what the pastor's saying, writing stuff down, and taking it with you when you leave that church. So
that's right.
So I was one of those people. I was going to church because I thought that I had that. For some reason in my head, I was like, oh, I was there. It was like they were just taking attendance for me. And that is the only thing that I could have qualified for, was just filling a seat. Nothing that we were talking about, that I was doing, that we were trying to put forth, was taking place in my life. I distanced myself because I thought, I'm big and bad. I've built this cool truck. I was this big dude playing football. I'm still a big dude. I'm strong enough. I can do this, right? And in my hard head, I was thinking, Trevor's got this.
Yeah, it's pride.
Oh man, was it? I was so prideful, and and I got in with a crowd of people that I should have never even been introduced to. My wife and I, so we were engaged at the time, and we got, I started distancing myself from church, from her, started hanging out with this group of people more and more, and I realized, hey, they're pretty cool, and they like me for being this person, and, it really took me down a dark path. My wife and I were, we were about to get married, stuff like that, and it occurred to me that I was not in the right place where I needed to be in my life, period. Like, just, I was not in the right place. I was not where that, I was not focused. My heart was not where it needed to be, and I realized it. And I told my wife, I said, we've got to hold off. We've got to hold off. And she told me, sorry.
No, it's good, man.
She told me that she wasn't giving up because she knew that I wasn't in the right place that I needed to be.
Yeah.
She promised me she'd give me the distance that I needed if I promised her that I'd let her know when I was serious. This was on a Wednesday. Okay, this was on a Wednesday night. Friday comes around, and I decided that I was going to cruising the coast. I had, my 416 square body. I had a bad unit. I knew it was reliable. I'd already put 40,000 miles on it, maybe 50,000 miles on it. I knew it would go the distance without trouble. I knew it. I had all the confidence in the world in that pickup truck. I also had all the confidence in myself.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? If something happens, hey, we're going to get there whether we like it or not. Nobody's going to stop me. And that's where I screwed up.
Yeah.
Because I thought Trevor had it. Never say nobody's going to stop you because somebody can.
Oh yeah.
When you're in the wrong place in your life, there's only one person that will absolutely stop you in your tracks.
That's right.
So I took off Friday morning. Hardly even packed a bag. I was like, I'll buy shirts when I get there. If I run out of underwear, I'll buy that too. Take off by myself. I'm like, you know what? I'm just getting away. I'm going by myself. I'm just gonna go. So I take off, and I live in a little bit above Atlanta, and I am an hour into the trip, get through Atlanta, down 20, and I'm like, oh man, weather's perfect. It's beautiful outside. It's not hot. It's just right, sun's shining. I was like, we'll pull over and get some gas, whatever. Topped off, and it only held like, I don't know, 5 gallons or so, 10 gallons. And I was like, all right, well, we're even getting good gas mileage. It's going to be a pretty good trip. So I get to going up the road a little bit further, and I make my way over towards Alabama. And by this time, I'm starting to get a little bit hungry for breakfast, stuff like that. I was like, I'll pull in and top off, and there's a good chance I can make it the rest of the way. And so it's probably, I don't know, it's probably 11 o'clock, getting close to lunch anyway. So I'm like, I'll just pull in, I'll get some lunch, I'll top off, and we'll go. So I pull into a gas station, pull to the gas pump, and sure enough, I top off. It holds like 5 gallons, no big deal. And go in, I get me a little bite to eat, come back. Well, I get in my truck, it fires up like normal, and I hit the highway again. I'm like, it's a good day. It's beautiful out here. Nothing can go wrong.
Yeah.
Well, I get on this long strip of highway. There's trees on both sides. 2-lane my way, 2-lane the other way, with a median in the middle. And I'll never forget this in my whole life. I'm running about 80 miles an hour, with traffic, cars around me, and I look at my phone and I have no service. Nobody can text me. Nobody can text me. I can't text them. I can't make any phone calls, nothing like that. And in my head, I'm like, man, would this be a bad spot to break down? And the second that thought crossed my mind, my truck shuts off running 80 miles an hour.
Oh, man.
So I have never, when I built that truck, I had never been on the side of the road in it. I have, popped tires, drove home on a wheel. I've done some really crazy stuff with that truck, but it's, knock on wood, had never left me stranded.
Yeah.
So it shuts off, and I'm like, oh boy, I just had to open my big mouth. So I coast over to the side of the road, and I'm like, all right, well, I just topped off of fuel. Maybe it's something silly. Maybe I hit a bump. I'm going through all these scenarios in my head. Well, I carry a toolbox with me everywhere I go. So here I go. I've got my little spark tester. I've got my fuel pressure gauge. I've got all this stuff. So first I start with fuel. I unhook the line. I put this little piece in. I check it. 60 pounds. I was like, all right, well, that's good. I pull that off. I put my spark tester between the old school way, between the plug and the coil, and it's lighting like crazy. I got spark. I'm like, there is no reason why this truck shouldn't run.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on the side of the road for 5-10 minutes, and I'm like, you know what? I bet there's a code. I bet I've tripped a code. It's a LS. At the time it was a PSI harness, so I had a factory ECU, and so I'm like, oh man, I'll scan it. I'll delete the codes and I'll get back on the road. Hook my scanner up. There's not a code in it, and I'm like, all right, cool. I've got fuel pressure. I've got spark. There's nothing holding me back, right? So I get in the truck. I look, and I hadn't even checked my phone. I looked at my phone again. There's nothing on it, and I mean, like, when there's nothing on it, I mean, like there. I have zero. It's in SOS mode. I can't make any. Okay. I can't even make an emergency call. So here I am on the side of the road, and I get to thinking, maybe if somebody passes by, maybe I'll do the thing I shouldn't do and ask a stranger, like, hey, can you take me up to the gas station? Maybe it's low on gas, something like that. I look up the road. There's nothing. I can't hear wind. I can't hear birds. I don't even hear cars. I'm on the side of a main highway that's 2 lanes my way and 2 lanes the other, and there is nothing. And when I say nothing, I mean like Like it's one of those eerie feelings, like my ears are ringing. It's so quiet.
Yeah.
And I get to thinking, I'm like, this might be a sign. This all of a sudden it kind of hit me that Trevor doesn't got this.
Yeah.
This one's out of Trevor's control. I've got my toolbox strode across the side of the highway. I've got all this stuff out. I'm knocking on the fuel tank, making sure there's gas in it. I've checked everything in the truck at this point, and Trevor can't fix it. So I kind of gather my thoughts. I look back up the road. There is still nothing. I look the other way. There is nobody in sight. And it's like God took his finger like a little ant and stopped me right where I was.
Yeah.
And said, "Guess what, Trevor? You don't have this." And
Man, that gives me cold chills just listening to you say it.
When I bowed my head and I apologized for being absent. Not that I wasn't there. I apologized because my heart wasn't there.
Yeah. Amen. Praise God.
I didn't make a deal with God. I told God that I wanted to change the way I was living.
Yeah.
I didn't say, if you do this, then I'll do this.
Yeah.
I didn't say, if you'll get this thing back running, I'll do this. I didn't ask, why me? I didn't ask, why right here? Because I knew that was the farthest he could get me from civilization that didn't have phone service. That was just me and him.
Yeah.
I knew exactly what it was. I was big-headed. I was arrogant. I would talk trash to people. I would say this. I would say that. I wouldn't back down. I did all these things because I thought Trevor had it.
Yeah.
Well, I realized really quick Trevor didn't have it. And he wasn't sending help until Trevor realized where help really comes from.
Yes, that's right.
And so when in that prayer, I said, Lord, I will change my ways. And it starts right now.
Amen.
I said, I'll do better. I'll be present, not just in the body, but I'll be present in the spirit. I will do what you want me to do, and I will do less of what Trevor wants to do.
Yeah.
And I gave it a few minutes. I kept praying. I thanked him for everything that he had blessed me for. Because in a time like that, you realize what you do and don't deserve.
That's right.
And when I ended that prayer, I thanked him for putting me where he put me so I could realize who's in charge.
Yeah.
And when I said amen, I got all my tools. I put them in the toolbox. I got everything off the side of the road. There still has not been a car past me. And when I say I'm in the middle of nowhere, I mean I'm in the middle of nowhere between trees. If there was a fire, I couldn't have got out. There's trees on both sides, and there's nowhere for me to go. There is nowhere for me to go. Gathered all my tools up, put them in the toolbox. Didn't even check my phone. Didn't even look at it. I grab a hold of the keys to the truck. I turn the ignition on. When I turned that ignition on, I felt a breeze. I could hear the birds start chirping again. My ears quit ringing. It was kind of like reality started setting back in again.
Yeah.
When I hit the switch, it didn't even turn over. It just fired right up.
Crazy, man.
So powerful.
Yes.
From that very moment, I've never went back.
Praise God.
I still took that trip that I thought I needed. I didn't have a hotel room. I didn't book anything. I just left. When I pulled into Biloxi, one of my buddies passed me, and he was like, and I mean like a buddy in Georgia. He passed me going the other way, and he texted me. He said, "Man, I didn't realize you were coming to cruising the coast. Do you have somewhere to stay?" I said, "Nope, I'm just here for a couple of days." He said, "Man, come crash with us." So I hung out with those guys for a couple of days. Ate well. And on the last day, he said, "Man, you all right?" I was kind of quiet, after what had happened. And he said, "Man, you all right?" And my response to him was, "I'd never been better." I didn't realize how wrong I'd been for how long I'd been doing that until all of a sudden I wasn't doing that anymore.
Yeah.
And it set me back because I realized that, man, the guy that just offered me this room, I've talked trash to him. We race. I've talked trash to this guy, and here he is offering me a room. I've took money from him. He's took money from me. We race. We used to bet all the time. And here he is offering me a room. I didn't deserve that.
Yeah.
And I told him, I was like, "Man, I'm a different person." I kind of explained to him. I didn't go into detail because it was so fresh. It was so new.
Oh yeah.
I just told him, I was like, "Man, I told him, I said, I'm sorry for my arrogance. It won't happen again." And give him a big hug. Came all the way back to Georgia. My truck never gave me a single issue. I saw the most beautiful sunsets I'd ever saw in my life. When I got home, I pulled into my driveway and I texted my fiance and I told her, "I'm serious. I need you." I don't know if it was just one of those feelings that she had, but she was already on the way. We sat down and we had a discussion. I told her what had happened. She cried. I cried. And a year later, we had the wedding that we wanted. We've got two. We've got two beautiful and healthy children.
Amen. Praise God.
My stepdaughter's like one of my best buddies. And I've got so much that I don't deserve.
Yeah.
But for anybody that asked why that I like teaching the college class in the 18 and up age group, the reason is because that's where I screwed up.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's where I realized how easy it is to really step out of church and not look back.
Yes.
And so when somebody asks me why that I do what I do and why that I don't do things that I don't do, the only reason that I can tell them is because Jesus.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's not, I am not where I am today. I'm not financially stable. I'm not confident in my spirituality. I'm not all of these things that I am now because of anything that Trevor done.
That's right.
I fully give every single bit of the credit that I receive to God, because I've been in the spot where I was humbled to realize I'm just a nobody.
Yeah.
Without God, I am nothing.
Yes.
I'm just another sinner on this earth. And that's why I don't put myself above anyone else. If nothing else, I put myself below others, because I want them to witness what I've witnessed without being stopped somewhere where they don't want to be to realize it.
Yeah. Forgot to get a hold of them.
That's exactly right.
It's all because Jesus. I mean, I love your statement right there. Because Jesus.
That's
everything we have, everything we do is because Jesus. And man, what a powerful testimony. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go ahead and finish.
No, you're all right. If I had a message to get out there, if I had to give a message, if somebody could only listen to me say one thing, my message would be that there's strength in God.
Amen.
And my favorite Bible verse, even in high school, I used to say it before football games, is Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ, which strengthens me. And it really took me having zero ability to fix a situation before I realized 100% that the Lord's where my strength comes from. It's not from me.
Yes. Yeah.
I can promise you back then I could run a mile, 2, 3 without phasing me. Playing all the football, baseball, all that stuff I did. But I can promise you I could not have ran far enough from that truck to find civilization that day.
Yeah.
I stayed right where I needed to be, and that's right where he needed me.
That's right.
And I dedicated my life to God because I realized that I couldn't do anything else in life without him.
Yeah.
I realized if I continue following what Trevor wants, I'm going to be in some real big trouble.
Yes.
And so from that day forward, my life's completely changed. After I got married, that's when I was asked to help with the college class. And when they asked me, it came from complete surprise. I didn't volunteer. I didn't do this. I didn't sign up for it. I was asked if I could help. And I went from helping that class for a couple of months left in the semester that year. And then whenever that school started back and we started our youth nights again, I never looked back.
Yeah.
That's where God wanted you. I started giving devotions. They didn't come from anything that I had done. They were straight from God, because I've never been somebody who could give a speech, write, a book. I could never do any of that stuff. And all of a sudden I had these devotions rolling in, and I could relate to the youngest one in the class all the way up to the oldest one in the class, relating to myself, relating to my wife, relating to the youth leaders, relating to all these things that that I didn't have prior to that.
Yeah.
And it's not because anything Trevor did. It's because Jesus.
Because Jesus. That's right. You were talking about Philippians 4:13, and Paul, when he was writing the letter to the Philippians, to the Philippian church, I'm sorry, it's because he's realizing where he came from, killing Christians,
right,
to where he's at. He realizes that he could have done none of what he did, and in and out of prisons and shipwrecked on islands, he could do nothing without Christ. Right. And it's all about Jesus. It's his name, and what he did, dying on the cross, giving his life for us. And man, your testimony is just so powerful. I'm sitting here tearing up listening to you.
Well, I'm trying my best not to get emotional because you're telling your testimony and it is so close to mine.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I'm just sitting here and I see everything that I did in what you're saying. I'm going to try not to tear up talking right now. But now I fixed my life.
Jesus fixed your life.
Jesus fixed my life. I turned my life back over.
Yeah.
And
since that point, God has been able to use him. His fiance got saved. That was one of his prayers. They got married. And God has just blessed him.
We had a big
because
talk.
Of that.
We had a big talk before we got married. Just like you did with your wife. We talked about things that needed to happen before we really tied the knot. And about a month after that talk, she got saved.
Yep.
Wow.
Now she is in church consistently. She's part of the baptism team. And she comes to Bible study, takes notes.
Yep.
And then
trying to learn.
If you knew her before that,
yeah,
that's not her. That's not her at all. But when God has changed her life, and it was because God changed my life.
Yes. And
turned me back around.
Right.
And I was able to live correctly in front of her.
Right.
And she had that service, just like you said that you had when you were 12. That you were being spoke to. And that's
burden.
Yeah, and that's what she had. We came home from that service. She's like, he was talking right to me. I was like, yeah, that's what happens. And she got saved on the couch at my parents' house. So
right here in our living room.
I tried. I held my emotions back that entire time, man. So right there at the end, and I hate getting emotional, but man, our testimonies are so close. It's crazy, man. I just listened to you talk. I'm reliving it, and it's just crazy.
God is good.
Yeah,
God is good, and Jesus is the answer.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so thankful that you came on with us today, Trevor, because I think that this story, there's somebody out there that needed to hear that today.
Mm-hmm.
And there's going to be somebody that maybe they come to Christ through that testimony, or maybe they turn their life back over. Rededicate to God and ask for forgiveness from straying away,
That's right.
Because I think we all go through those periods, and with you, it was a lot about pride, and for me, it was all about hurt and bitterness, and for some, it's just sowing some wild oats, For
me, it was just doing exactly what I wanted to do. For me, it wasn't much of a pride thing. It was more of just, I'm going to live my life exactly how I want, and expect my fiance to come to Christ through that.
Expect God still to bless you, even though you're not living the way you would like
and pray that my fiance will. Well, at the time, my fiance would come to Christ, and I'm living like garbage. It just doesn't work like that at all.
Well, Trevor, it has been. I don't want to go anywhere else with this. I just want to end it right here. It's been awesome having you on with us. What a great testimony. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wind this thing up?
No, I mean, the only thing that I could add is if there's anybody out there that listens to this and might not quite understand, might not quite realize what's going on, or might have some questions. I mean, social media is a pretty powerful thing in a lot of ways. Some are bad, but I'm out here to make it good.
That's right.
And so if anybody has a question, I'm sure that you guys are open to answering questions if anybody has anything, that they need to ask. But, guys like us, we're here. We're here for somebody to talk to and somebody to compare with. And, well, this happened, but you didn't say this needed to happen. It's not, we all have our individual things that go on. They might be in a similar situation, but we are all different in our own ways. We all grow up different. We all know somebody different. And one thing that I like to share with my class is, we all encounter different people. Y'all will very rarely ever encounter the same people that I encounter, especially on a daily basis. Yeah. And we need to try to be the light that someone might need in their life. Amen. And if I can spark some kind of flame in somebody where they're like, wow, this guy's a little bit different. I want somebody to investigate why I'm different.
Yes.
I want somebody to look into my story, and being able to talk to you guys and this being recorded and all that fun stuff. Now I can relive everything that I've said, everything that's my story, and along with everyone else, we're here for you, and the world needs it. The world needs people like us just trying to tell a little bit about Jesus, because the world don't need Trevor. They need God. Trevor's nothing but a vessel that God's using to get his name out there. So don't give Trevor any praise for it. Don't give me any credit for it. Don't give me anything above a high five, a pat on the back, a hey man, I love it. I don't. It's all God.
Amen. Yep. Amen. Well, I'm going to end it like this: because Jesus. So, guys, that's right. We love that you guys were with us today. We appreciate you all. We love you, and we will catch you on the next one.